Welcome everyone to the second annual panel discussion on the present and future of data warehousing. We have 4 great panelists here. Let's do a quick round of introductions. So Lars, can you introduce yourself briefly, who you are, where you come from, what you're doing?
Yes, my name is Lars Rönnbäck. I live in Stockholm, Sweden. I work at a small consultant company where I spend about half time doing anchor modeling at various Swedish clients, and the other half I'm working on large-scale simulations, sort of financial forecasting. I've been in the industry for about 20 years.
Thank you, Marielle.
Okay, I'll go next. My name is Marielle. As of recently, I'm a freelance data analytics engineer. That's the title I choose to call myself. I'm relatively new to the data modeling profession, let's say. So I guess I started out just under 3 years ago as the only data engineer / analytics engineer at an online publishing company, and decided that this is much better than doing data science because most companies don't know how to do data science. I really like data modeling because previously I was a researcher in a field called cognitive sciences, which is the study of how people learn and how people organize knowledge in their heads. And I see data modeling as pretty much the same thing, but for businesses. So it's a fulfilling kind of mental exercise for me as well to be working in this industry. So hopefully I have something meaningful to contribute to this discussion.
Thank you, Amy.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amy Raygada. I've been working in tech for around 15 years in software engineering and data. In data, I have around 9 or 8 years working as data quality engineer, data engineer, and now as a data product manager. So basically, I'm trying to drive data mesh and data governance policies and technical part as well. In my current company, Swiss Marketplace, but I'm based in Germany actually. So I'm also looking forward to learn and share with you on different topics. I'm also a fan of data modeling, also of Data Vault, and looking forward to hear more. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Patrik.
Hello, Patrik Lager. I'm a consultant working from a company called Top of Minds. And I've been in this industry around data warehousing and analytical systems design for over the last 20 years. Yeah, so I hope I can contribute some to the discussion.
Thanks, everyone. So let's start. The overarching topic here is we'll be discussing some data buzzwords and trying to decide if they're here to stay or if they're good to go. And the first one is, of course, ChatGPT and generative AI more generally, because I think this is really having an impact in our industry and probably will have for years to come. But I don't want to preclude anything. So let's see what you're thinking. What is the impact of ChatGPT and similar generative AI on the data industry? How serious is it? Is it here to stay, or will it be a fad that's gone soon? Maybe Marielle, we can start with you.
Yeah, sure. So given my background in cognitive sciences, I think a lot about the nature of knowledge and the rise of LLMs and ChatGPT going mainstream has given me a lot of, given me a lot of food for thought, I guess, of what the nature of knowledge is in addition to that, because I think people, and I'm not just talking about data professionals, people treat LLMs as if they're basically a crystal ball that can tell you what the future is, or it can tell you a little bit more about yourself and that kind of thing. Or it's like a person who can, it's basically of someone's brain that you can kind of pick at to, kind of generate knowledge from. But I watched a TED Talk by Professor Yejin Choi. She's a computer scientist, and she studies LLMs and common sense, kind of the relationship between the two, or kind of how to train large language models to have common sense. And I really like what she said, that large language models are not knowledge models, which means that we can't possibly generate knowledge from these large language models, especially when it comes to like, business logic, right? Like if the language models are not trained on your data, then it can't possibly tell you anything about your business and can't give you business insights. And I say this because I find that I consider data modeling as representing business knowledge for a company. So I guess it's here to stay in a sense that it is supposed to help us as data professionals become more productive. For example, generating boilerplate SQL queries and that kind of thing, but it cannot replace our ability to generate business insights, because that's not what LLMs are literally trained to do. They're trained to predict the next word or the next possible word. But it isn't, at this moment in time, not necessarily trained to make sense of knowledge, if that makes sense. Sorry, I said sense a lot. Did anyone count?
Patrik, what do you think?
Well, I find them really interesting. I would say that the large language models are here to stay, certainly, for a lot of different reasons. But I also have I'm not really 100% fond of them, but that is from the fact that we humans are by nature lazy. So if someone can do something for us, we happily let it do it. And at this point, we don't need to pay that much money for it, so it can do things for us. But the thing is that if you let someone do something for you, you're not learning yourself how to do it. So we are losing competence as humans if we use these language models too much. And I think that's, these will become stronger and better as time passes by, but I think we should be considering that if that one is generating the website or the model or whatever, then you will never learn how to do a website or do a model or code that language or do those things. And then it will be sort of a downgrading of human, really. We should be proud of our competence and our knowledge. We should be proud of that, and the willing to learn should not stop, because then these large language models will reduce our human race to something stupid, I would say, in a long time, in the long future. But sure, they are here to stay. We just need to know and understand how to use them and respect our own knowledge and our own competence as something important.
Thank you. Amy, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree totally with Patrik that in the long term, this can cause to lose some of our competences for sure, because even you can see it now, kids are using it to create works for school or the university, even to create things at work, that you can see posted, I don't know, Confluence, this kind of things based on these ChatGPT, and then they modified a few words and it looks like they did it, right? And that's fostered the laziness of the brain. But also I agree with Marielle in the fact that this can help a lot, doing, for example, the SQL validations, create visualizations, export query results, even do data cleaning and a lot of good things that will make our job easier on the data engineering side. But however, I think that, I actually read a joke a few days ago in LinkedIn that says, like, we should not be worried because to be replaceable by AI, we will need the business to be accurate and they should know what they want. And usually that is not the case. So there's still, the need to have people actually doing all these business logic and understanding. So I totally agree with Marielle on that part. But we need to be careful until which extent we can use these or how public it should be, because we can do a lot of predictive analytics and advanced language processing, and this is pretty cool, but it's a lot of risks that I don't think are well defined or well set for the humanity in general.
Thank you. Lars, your take.
Yeah, I think that large language models are definitely here to stay. Whether or not it will be ChatGPT or some other model remains to be seen, but I think that large language models definitely are here to stay. And we have to remember also that they are still, we're still in a very early stage of development of this technology. And we're already seeing some, I mean, I've seen some people dismiss ChatGPT, for example, based on some simple tests that they've made, but I've been trying to follow up the scientific research also, and there are new papers coming out every week where they can improve performance of the models when it comes to providing consistent and reliable results, for example. So you probably all heard of the fact that they can hallucinate. At some point they start to veer off and provide things that look factual, but they're actually not. But they've already come a really long way to reduce the amount of hallucination. So I definitely think they're here to stay, and I think actually that we as a human race will have some challenges ahead of us as these large language models grow more capable. There are also several emergent properties that I know they're just predicting the next word, but they have emergent properties that nobody really understands yet, why they are able to do certain things. It's interesting. I think we will have some interesting years ahead of us. Quite recently, I think it was just a couple of weeks ago, there was an open source model released that people can use and train on their own business data if they like. It's not as capable as ChatGPT or GPT-4 from OpenAI, but it's still a very capable model, and it's something that anyone can download and start using in their own businesses right now if they want to. So a lot of things are happening really quickly within this field, and I think in our profession we should probably stay a little bit up to date with the news and what's coming. You probably also saw the release of Microsoft Fabric a couple of days ago, where you basically have what I used to call an intelligent lake, where you have a data lake, and on top of that you have some different AI technologies and access to various databases. And so vendors are also adopting this really quickly.
Can I add something to my answer?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so on the subject of large language models helping us to become more productive, like I think one thing that hasn't been talked about as much is what we're going to do with all that time that ChatGPT helps us save. So for example, I have used ChatGPT to generate just generic column descriptions for my table documentation. And that saved me a couple of hours of writing the descriptions myself. But I don't know that I actually used the time that I saved to do something productive, like say, I don't know, understand the business better, like talk to stakeholders and see if like, I don't know, any of the business requirements have changed. So I don't know if anyone else has thoughts on that, but I'd love to hear what you think about that. And then another thing I wanted to mention on the topic of hallucinations and kind of new tools coming out of this kind of wave of generative AI. I recently, a couple of days ago, saw that I think I forgot the name of the company, but it's this company, data company, released a tool that is built on top of GPT-4 that lets you talk to your data, which I find like a very strange. I don't know. It's just a very strange way of phrasing what actually like. What a large language model does, because I don't know, this personification of ChatGPT and large language models is, I find it a little not disturbing, but like just not representing exactly what a large language model does. I don't think it's sentient in the sense that like it can think. And it cannot, like I said, cannot really generate knowledge itself. Like when ChatGPT spits out an answer, it doesn't know that it makes sense. It only makes sense because we say it makes sense. And that's why when it hallucinates, when it doesn't make sense, we say it doesn't make sense. We are the ones who are in the end determining whether the answer that we are given by these large language models, we determine whether it makes sense. And whether it's useful for us. So I just kind of wanted to point that out.
Anyone wants to respond to that?
Yeah, I think that's really on the cue about what I was doing about thinking about the future. If we, in the end, he gives us an answer and we are not competent enough to tell if it's right or wrong, that will be really bad, because then we are dependent on them. And if it would hallucinate, we would go, yeah, because ChatGPT or whatever it's called in the future said it, and that's the truth. I can't argue with it because I don't have the competence to say if it's right or wrong anymore. So I think it's really good, but really important, even more important, that we are sort of able to criticize the answers. And to do that, we need to have the competence to do it. So I am very strongly recommending people to not stop learning, because there is a large language model around it. We need to maybe be even more informed and understanding to really see if the value we get or the answers we get are what we need and are the correct answer for our need in the context we are within when we're asking the question. So, yeah.
Anyone else? Okay, then I guess we move on to the next buzzword. The data buzzword of 2022 definitely was data mesh, but now it seems that the hype around data mesh has died down a little bit. So again, the question: data mesh here to stay, or will be gone soon? Amy, I guess you have a strong opinion on that.
Yeah, I will say that is not something new, right? This is something that has been happening with this domain-driven development for so long in software engineering already. In some way, somehow it was revamped and being thrown to the data side of things. However, even for my own experience and a lot of people that I've been speaking with lately, in the community, it's kind of a struggle to really have a good implementation if you don't do, a change of mindset. I'm biased right now. I don't know if it's really gonna stay here for long as the name of data mesh, but some other kind of mix or methodology in between the normal data governance, politics and this kind of things like Dhamma type and data mesh are gonna kind of emerge out of it, because the technical part is, I will say, is easy if you have the right people to implement it. There is a lot of tools in the market. There is a lot of things that you can do. But the mental change or to convert your organization into a data-driven organization who really interested that's the main challenge. And that's where most of the companies are struggling right now. So they start something and then they are doing data mesh for, I don't know, 1 month, 6 months, 1 year. And then they basically, oh no, we're going to drop this. It didn't work because they didn't, fix the problems from the very beginning, from the root. And they struggle with the whole adoption of the thing. So I think some way, somehow it might die and it will be reborn with a different name and some mixes in between other methodologies.
Thank you. Lars, what's your take?
Well, I think there are some good points and good ideas in the thinking of the data mesh. And I know a few companies are starting to pursue it, and some are claiming to have some sort of data products already. I'm not so sure that they have it in the sense that Samak was thinking of in her book, but even so. So I think it will be around for a while still. I think in the longer run, we will see issues also with the data mesh. I don't think it's free of issues, and we will see sort of a new wave of centralization again. I think we go in sort of cycles where we centralize and decentralize and centralize and decentralize. And hopefully we learn things along the way. So when it comes to a centralization wave, the next time we can take the good things we've learned from the data mesh and take it into whatever we build centrally. I think one issue that it will face is actually from a sort of a PR perspective, because I think right now so much will happen within the AI space that it's kind of hard to make yourself heard. And if you're a business and you want to spend money on something, it could be the case that money is going to be spent on other things than redesigning your data architecture, given what's about to happen. That's what I think.
Thank you, Marielle.
I saw this funny meme last year when data mesh was, the big buzzword. It's the one with the butterfly, like, is this the blah blah blah, this kind of meme, and the butterfly, it says like multiple dbt repos, and then yeah, and in the meme it says like, is this a data mesh? Like, if you have basically silos in your company, where every business team just does what they want, does that qualify as a data mesh? So I feel like I think the idea of like decentralized, decentralized and domain-oriented analytics is here to stay, in the sense that like many business teams are happy to have more ownership over the data that they feel is relevant to them or belongs to them, and it is also less work for the central data engineering team, and they can focus on other things. What those other things are, I can't really imagine at this point. What I would be concerned about in the future is how teams would then build consensus about like concepts that they have in common. I find that's easier when everything is centralized. So you'll have just one data set that you look at when you need to, refer to a particular entity. And if it's decentralized, what do you do then when like two teams feel responsible for the same domain? So yeah, I'd be interested. I don't think I've ever encountered an implementation of data mesh that people are happy with. If anyone knows of any, please let me know. But I'm sure that the concept and the desire to have more ownership over data isn't going to go anywhere.
Thank you. Patrik, what do you think?
Yeah, I think yes. The rest of the people, I think there is some good parts in data mesh, but I also think there is not a lot of companies, but there will be a few companies that really trying data mesh now, that's sort of taking on the data mesh, and it becomes like trying to solve a problem with an overkill solution, so to speak. It costs a lot of money, it's a lot of investment, it's a change of organization and technology, and build up everything around it, and it is not the root cause. They haven't understood the root cause. It's just the next shiny word. It's the next cool thing. So let's do data mesh. Our data lake, our central data lake failed, so now we do data mesh, because the issue wasn't the data lake design itself, it was that it was centralized. And maybe that wasn't the issue. Maybe there was an incorrectly designed data lake that was the issue, or the sourcing strategy, or the modeling technique, or whatever. It could be so many different aspects that it has nothing to do if it's centralized or not. It's just bad design. So I think I have looked at a lot of videos on data mesh solutions that different companies is presenting, This is how we have done it. This is how we do it, and stuff like that. And almost everyone, they come from a centralized data lake, more or less. And they say, we had this data lake, it didn't work. It was so heavy to work with, nothing happened. And so now we're decentralizing this. And then they show their architecture picture, and it's, instead of one data lake, they have 6 data lakes. And if they haven't designed these data lakes correctly accordingly to an analytical system design, they will end up with 6 not working data lakes. So there is I think there is in our industry, there is a lot of misconception about how you build things from an analytical perspective. People doesn't really know from an architectural design implementation point of view what we are trying to achieve when building an analytical system, and what we need to achieve when building an analytical system. So we are, as Lars said at one point, there's a lot of JBots, just a bunch of tables. So people just push tables into another platform and write SQLs or Python or whatever against these tables, and they're thinking that, wow, I built an analytical system. But you really haven't. You haven't designed anything. So, and I find it. So I think there is a lot of companies, as when I see these videos, I think they sort of have investing a lot of money trying to solve something, and the root cause is not the centralization of their problem. So I think, but there are things like data as a product. And with that, the data contract thinking and all of those things, I like those. So I hope that those will stay, because pushing down the responsibility and ownership of the data down to the domains and the sources will make the life of a central solution much easier. So, but in the end, if you think about it, as soon as we will need to start to calculate, let's call them holistic values, that are moving over multiple domains, like revenue of a customer or the cost of a customer and the margin of a customer, where you need to look at all of the domains and find the values within these areas and combine them in a calculation, then you need something centralized in the end anyway. So and you need to be time variant, because you want to see the trends on how our customer margin has changed and how that relates to the campaign we did for this new product, and what segments of products and what happened when we did this and do that, and what can we do in the future to not, and so on and so forth. And at that point, because we need to remember that the data warehouse idea comes from the idea that we are supposed to be able to ask holistic questions about the enterprise. Not that what is my bonus as a sales rep? That question can be answered by Salesforce, but more holistic question. That's why it came along, and that's why there were certain design principles around that. And I think with some on the way, people have forgotten the basic idea around why we wanted to build these, call them monolithic solutions. But those questions are still there. They are still asked by management, and we need to support them. So, so I think some companies has just, but still, data mesh in itself, I think it will remain. But I think it's also a good point. It will probably merge into something else, and it will move, as Lars will, it will move between centralized and decentralized, as we have been doing over the last 40 years. But we will maybe get into something hybrid level. We are learning on the way, and maybe finding a way where we can compensate between these two areas in a better way to get a more agile and better and faster delivery of data of good quality.
Thank you. Amy, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to actually reply to Marielle regarding the how do you share the data products in between two different teams and all that. I mean, and actually Patrik touched the topic as well, is with the data contracts. And when you have these data contracts, someone, I don't know, from the source to the main pipeline that will deliver the first data product, and then this data product field is a curated data set that will basically be part of some other data products. There will be some other data contracts on top, that will let know these people. But as Patrik says, whenever, we need to evolve with this model of this data product, there will be changes. And if the company is too large and you have multiple domains and multiple products, at some point, I think this will be very painful, because it will get, the scalability of these. I haven't been there yet. We are implementing this and we have certain amount of data products that is manageable. But when I think in the future and I see multiple domains, multiple products, and how things needs to be done, I think it's going to be a little bit complicated. And the reducing of the associated pressure, on centralized data teams and removal of these organizational bottlenecks, that is like the solution of the data mesh, won't exist anymore, and will bring more hurdle or more issues, that will arise as you are scaling up with this model. But although I also agree that, empowering this self-serve data infrastructure and have these data as product or in domain-oriented architecture is something good. But I agree also with Patrik and Lars in the sense that might merge in these centralized, decentralized at some point, to have this democratized data access, but also some centralized data management, depending on the use case, right? If you're in banking, probably it's going to be more centralized one more time, even though I have heard of a lot of banks trying to go with the data mesh as well. And, companies that are maybe a little bit different with different business models will be more, siloed, decentralized, I will say. But that was pretty much to answer this for Marielle. Thanks.
Thanks as well.
Okay. So what I wrote a few months ago was that I said data mesh is dead. It just doesn't know it yet. And what I wanted to say is pretty similar to what you guys said as well. Data mesh has some good ideas, and they will probably stay, but it will probably get a new name, because so many people have been moving into the data mesh space that don't really know what they're doing. And there will be several prominent failures where people think data mesh is not working. And so at some point, we will have something very similar to data mesh that just won't be called data mesh anymore.
Yeah, and I also, from what I have heard and seen with many people that I have spoke, and these, videos on YouTube and these kind of things, when I speak with real people in close spaces, they really share the pain they are having, the problems they are really struggling. But when you see the use case on, in a panel or somewhere, everything is shiny and everything is working, and they have like the best data lake ever, and everything is cats and rainbows. But usually it's not the case. When you really have a conversation with them, we are all almost having the same pain points, and it's very interesting to share these. So when I do my panels or when I talk to people, I really try to share these, because I think it's more important to get the bad and the ugly than the cats and the rainbows. Because, right now there are not that many real use cases, I will say, or case studies that you can actually focus and try to replicate in your organization, but you have to try and fail. And if people really shares the whole experience, will be much easier for the other companies or other people. So it's also a problem here. Everybody is bragging about it, but it's not being real.
Josh, you want to say something?
No, I agree with what all of you are saying. And I also think that, we often only get to hear the success stories and not so much about the failures. And that's a shame, because I think there's a lot to learn from the actual failures that have been happening out there. So I guess we will see where that goes when it comes to the data mesh. I know for a fact that it's been happening for data warehousing anyway.
I would like to add also that there's an interesting, why a lot of our solution over the last 10 or 15 years has been failing, or you can see that the emergence of a data product thinking and the data contract thinking, I think, is a result of the calling we had like 15 or 10 years ago. And the thing was, what we were screaming for at that point was raw data. We need the raw data. There is no value in the data-less model. The true value is in the raw data hidden somewhere in the deepest, darkest recesses of our company. Now we just need all the data. Give us all the data, and we will find golden nuggets everywhere. And the company will be perfect, make a lot of money. And we have the idea of sourcing as much data as possible and in its rawest format, and believing that we will make money with that has been shown not to work. And the idea then that has come up is really like, we need to have modeled APIs that is representing business entities and business information, and the domains, models, and the sources. And that has to understand also from data mesh perspective, even if the domain are responsible for their model from a central perspective as well, they have to be interoperability between them. So you have to have definitions and things. It has to align itself within the business because we are representing the business. And to build these solutions, to build these data products, that is not that easy for sources to do. You need to understand that if you do that, you are taking all the ETL that we are doing in a data warehouse or a data lake and pushing it down to the source, which in itself, I think is good for a certain reasons, but you need to understand that then they are going to have to build this. They're going to have to take 15 tables, join them and do certain things to be able to represent a data product, which is business oriented, which is the data, which is the idea of a domain model, right? And the thing is that I have seen this, because this is not new either. The idea that the different sources would send data to the data warehouse in a unified file look from a business perspective was something that existed in the early 20s, and it was sort of what they said was like, we can't do that. It takes too much time for the sources to build these kinds of integrations, to create these files. It was not APIs at that point, it was files, but it's the same thing. It was too much business, sort of file logic or modeling logic that were in the source side. So it took so much time for them to give you new data. So then that was abandoned, and instead we go for raw data. So I think we will see something of a movement here again, like we are forcing down to the source. You should represent data and the semantics, and you are responsible for the data quality and all of those things. If we can get that to work, sending that data to a central data warehouse will be the easiest data warehouse ever to build, because it will more or less just load the data they send, because it's already checked by quality, it's already modeled by business, and its interoperability, it followed the way of federated governance of the model. That data warehouse will be a true extract and load because all the logic is more or less done then. So, but yeah, I see it to believe it, I would say.
Lars?
Yeah, Patrik reminded me of something, and it was one of the talks today at the conference that Nikolai Gulov held, where he was talking about a data warehouse that was practically bombarded with events of different kinds. And I can't really see how you would maintain the nimbleness that the data warehouse he was describing. It was ingesting all of these events and very smartly categorizing these so that you could actually sit and watch a daily report about new types of events that you hadn't seen before, and do the engineering work to take care of that very quickly. I can't really see how, and back to what Patrik said, how would you maintain that nimbleness if you're going to push this down to the source and into a data product? I mean, they would have to change their contract extremely rapidly. So there's also risk of losing nimbleness within the business if you are pushing it down to the source. And like you said, we used to have contracts a long time ago but they were file based, and we sort of failed to a lot of businesses failed to actually maintain those. So that's why we went to raw data.
Thank you. So the next term is something very fundamental to our industry. It's data modeling itself. So again, what do you think? Is data modeling here to stay, or will it be gone soon? Maybe start with Patrik.
No, I hope not. No, I think we have seen an emerging of data modeling again after this raw data, dumping data, trying to make sense out of data in its rawest format without modeling has failed miserably. We are seeing the emerging again of the data modeling. Of course, there will be a back and forth, but I think that for the next maybe 5 years, data modeling will be an important part again of what we're doing, which I'm very happy about. It is a very, but one thing I just would like to pick up is that when it comes to data modeling today, there is so many people that comes from a different area, like software engineers, and never use data modeling, and there is a need of training, I would say, a need of heighten the competence around data modeling and what data modeling really is about, and also to understand that data modeling in different contexts and for different purposes has different ways of doing it. So it's a rather large area, data modeling as such, and there is a lot to learn if you want to become good at it. So we should sort of try to sell it to the people and make them actively train themselves in this, because people are putting so much time into learning how to code Python or use whatever new orchestration tool that has come along, or whatever new shiny technical solution. But it would be good if more people could focus on learning how to do good data models. I think that would be important. But it's here to stay, at least for the next 5 years, I would say, before it maybe turns back again.
Marielle, what do you think?
So since I'm relatively new to the field, like I had no idea that at some point in time over the last 20 years that there was there was a dip in popularity when it comes to data modeling. I had no awareness of this whatsoever until fairly recently. And I'm not actually also sure about the circumstances surrounding that dip in popularity. So maybe some of you can educate me here. So because this has been, the data modeling has practically characterized my entire career in tech, like I hope it will stay. And I feel like the more information there is being generated out there, like in terms of raw data, I think humans will more and more find the need to make sense of all of it. And again, for me, data modeling and my profession, our profession, is about sense making, it's about curating knowledge, it's about representing knowledge. And I feel like in this overwhelming world of like kind of information overload, the need to make sense of this data by way of data modeling is here to stay, at least hopefully. So, yeah.
Thank you, Lars. What's your take?
Yes, I think data modeling is here to stay. I think a data model is a very good way to concisely describe the inner workings of a business. And if we look back at large language models, they are actually ideal to feed into a large language model in order for it to understand how a business is working and operating. So even if whatever we're using it for, I think they are a really good description of a business. I also think that producing a data model is an exercise in which the business itself actually becomes more knowledgeable about what it's doing and gets a shared language in which it can actually communicate about the things that are in the data model. And on top of all of that, I also think that a data model provides a perfect preparation of data for analysis. So if you're going to do some sort of advanced analytics of your data, and most businesses want to do that, then having a proper data model in which your data is stored will greatly simplify the work of doing those analysis that you want to do. So I definitely think that data modeling will be here to stay, but maybe they will become, I mean, they will definitely fill the descriptive role of being a good description of a business and something to lean back on when you do analytics. But I'm not 100% sure that it will manifest itself in a database the way we've seen them do before.
Thank you, Amy.
Yeah, to Patrik about educating the new generations in data modeling. Actually, I remember my mentor that I had. He made us learn the data warehouse toolkit, and it was painful because it's a long book, and it has a lot of information. But you actually learn all the basics, like all the best practices. Even though now you don't go exactly, into the Kimball model as such, very perfectly done, but it is a good way to actually understand where it comes from, right? And why it needs to be done. For me, it's something that it will stay as well. Maybe not in the restricted way to having, I don't know, Data Vault or Kimball or Imod, but more on this Team Kimball data warehouse, where it's a combination of some of the methodologies and they do it more agile. But I think it's really important actually to continue doing this, as Marielle said, because it's basically the way how we think and how we can provide these business insights to the people, without actually overwhelming too much, let's say, the data analysts with raw data that they might not understand how to make sense out of it. I know now, for example, the analytical engineer role is kind of in between, and they need to make sense out of it, right? But not everybody's like that, and we need to keep coping with these people who only has this data analyst background, and the new generations that might have more data engineering combined with data analysis. And I also believe that every industry is very different. So one set the rules for his or their industry might impact negatively for the other one. So you also have to understand what kind of modeling really impact correctly your organization or not, based, I don't know, size, type of business. So basically, and what also the executives from your company would like to know. And that's why I don't think it's going to be removed from the scope anytime soon, and it's going to remain there. But education definitely is needed, so people really understand why this is necessary and why it was created from the very beginning, right? From the old data stack, let's say that way.
Thank you, Lars. Yes.
Yeah, I think I should clarify myself a little bit about what I said at the end there. And what I meant was that when I said it, I don't think that they maybe are going to physically manifest themselves in databases like we've seen before, is that data modeling as physical data modeling is something that I see probably going away in the future. I think the big work will be with doing the logical models, where a really smart database engine would be able to pick whatever physical representation is the best for that logical model or parts of the logical model. So if I have a logical model, some parts may be stored in a graph database underneath, some are stored in a hierarchical database, some are stored as relational, etc., etc. If a really smart database engine could be built, it should be able to figure out the best possible way to represent the data. And maybe as data changes or grows over time, it could switch strategies and so on. But logical data modeling, definitely, and conceptual as well. Those are definitely going to stay.
Thank you. For the final question, I just had to pick this since both Patrik and Lars are here. What about ensemble modeling techniques like Data Vault or Focal or Anchor? Are they here to stay, or will they be gone soon? Maybe we start with Marielle. What do you think?
Okay, so this is probably the topic I have the least experience in. And I think it's because these techniques do require like a certain data maturity that I haven't been exposed to. So I've mostly been working for startups and at best scale ups that might not have like the volumes that are required to make these techniques make actual sense. So I'm gonna like leave this to the experts.
Okay, so how about Patrik?
I think what Lars said about databases very smart databases in future might decide on how to represent data in the database depending on different kinds of data and stuff like that. I think that is somewhat into the future, but what I see both from a data vault and I suppose Anchor and Focal is that we are abstracting the need of physically represent things, but we have these optimization engines instead. So you feed them with metadata, with model representations, and they generate the physical structures and the code to load them. And I think that will just be more and more accelerating. So we are sort of moving away from the need of doing the physical modeling. I think in the future, in the near future at least, we will have still the physical model will be defined by a set of rules that we set as human or design principles. If you go Focal or Anchor or Data Vault, is different design rules around it, but those, since they are so generic and repetitive, they can be delivered by optimization and just sort of feeding them metadata or a representation of a model that then is transformed into what physical implementation pattern you choose. So I think Ensemble will continue to be here because it's how agile it is and how well it fits into optimization of solutions.
Thank you, Amy.
Yeah, I think that, I really like Data Vault with all these ingestion layers and curation, etc. But I also seen the tendency from people to do some kind of a hybrid thing between, Data Vault and something else with these layers without really calling it Data Vault because of the complexity, that it kind of require, or the knowledge most likely, of some person that really knows how to model in Data Vault. But I definitely think is going to stay. Maybe again is going to be a hybrid between these new trends coming with DBT, for example, and what it was in the past. But I think it's going to stay, and I think it's a great way to keep data quality on point, historical data, and also give all the business value and information as needed.
Okay, finally, Lars.
I think it depends on how far into the future we are looking. I don't actually expect any of our modeling techniques to survive indefinitely, but I think that some of the ideas that we've brought forward within these modeling techniques are going to stick and stay. If you look at Data Vault was the first modeling technique to actually separate the immutable parts from the mutable parts of the data, and with all the benefits that brought. Focal has this fantastic metadata layer, which I also think has pinpointed and put the finger on how important metadata is. And Anchor is the 6th normal form and is great when it comes to temporality and brought new things to the table when it comes to producing bitemporal and multitemporal solutions. And I think those things are going to stay. Whether or not it will be our 3 techniques that survive in the long run, I'm not so sure. There will probably be something else, but combining ideas from all of us, I think that would be the strongest offer. And I see no reason why that wouldn't happen in the future.
Very nice, thank you. So let's do a final round. I want to know, what have you learned today? So maybe let's start with Amy. What have you learned today?
I actually like to see how we agree on a lot of topics in AI, for example, which is this buzz word and thing happening right now. So I think we as data professionals need to be kind of the gatekeepers of these technologies as well, and work together to avoid having these kind of problems that we are seeing as a risk to arise in the future. Because we are actually the only ones who can kind of stop this kind of thing. So I really like this, that everybody's kind of on the same page, and also that the data modeling is not gonna disappear as such. It's also cool to see from you guys as well, Patrik and Lars, that you also think that it's not gonna be disappearing, but as always, evolving within time and space. Yeah.
Thank you, Patrik.
Yeah, I sort of agree what we said. That we come from sort of very different places. Maybe not Lars and I, but that we all sort of have a very close connection around these different subjects. If we take data mesh and AI, and there is an understanding. I think this is important. Lars also hit the point on when the ensemble modeling is going to survive or not is maybe not the important part. It's the fundamental ideas around it, whatever that becomes in the future. But that we sort of agree upon these things is showing that we, from many different aspects, from different views, from different knowledge, have a what would you call it, that you are help me, Lars, ödmjuk.
Humble.
Yeah, we are humble in for these kind of new techniques, and also understanding that they can evolve, and we don't need to sort of strike down on them and say this is bad, just because something is bad about it, because they all bring good things with them, and we just need to sort of harvest the good things and keep evolving with them and learn from the new ideas and bring it together with the old knowledge and combine that and make even better solutions in the future.
Thank you. Marielle, what have you learned today?
I think that of all of the terms that we discussed in this panel, that data modeling is the concept that will for sure stay on for the foreseeable future, because it's tool agnostic, it's technology agnostic, and it'll always be relevant for as long as people need to understand themselves and their businesses. So I think, it's like also kind of listening to the talks at the conference and sharing this panel with people who've been working in the industry for decades now. Like, it's nice to see that even though terms have changed and techniques have been adapted, that the profession is able to adapt to the emerging times. So I think we're amongst good people. This is a good crowd, and this is a good profession to be in.
Thank you, Lars. You have the last word.
Yeah, I've also learned that there's a lot of like-minded people out there, and that I find that very energizing. And I always come away from conferences and events like these with renewed energy into what I'm doing. Unfortunately, I know from my own experience, I'm not too good at actually maintaining that. I think we should perhaps keep in touch more than we are, because it's we have a lot of good ideas, and I'm just afraid that we're caught up in our own little bubble, and it's of our own like-minded people. And I think we could do, if we just put some effort into working together, I think we could probably reach outside of that bubble and actually inform a lot of other people about what we're doing and the importance of, say, data modeling. So I hope that we can actually achieve that as well. Some sort of network where we can keep in touch and exchange ideas and think about how to spread the word.
Very good. Thank you all. Great discussion today. Unfortunately, our time is up, but we will meet again. I'm definitely interested in providing a forum for discussions like that. We will do another Christmas themed discussion as well towards the end of the year. So let's stay in touch and talk to you soon. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.